How we do this, we are the truest. Got these fangs super sharp, your shit toothless. Cold-hearted, yeah we ruthless. All the ghouls in the cut, let's get ghoulish. In the graveyard, acting foolish. Finna dance with the devil to no music. Cold-hearted, yeah we ruthless. All the ghouls in the cut, let's get ghoulish.
Oh, hello. Welcome to a brand new episode of Ghoulish, a podcast hosted by me, Max Booth, an undead host. On today's episode, I am talking to Gretchen Felker-Martin about disabilities in apocalyptic fiction. Gretchen's new novel, Manhunt, comes out tomorrow if you will listening to this podcast today, which is always today, to be honest. I mean, tomorrow is just an unreachable goal, right? There's no tomorrow. It's always just today. We live in the present. So if you're listening to this podcast on the 22nd of February 2022, so 2/22/22, I guess would be the date, then today Manhunt is out. But if you were listening to this podcast before the 22nd, the book comes out in the future. And if you're listening to this podcast after the 22nd, the book's already out. Go buy it. It came out already. You have no excuse not to read Manhunt. It's a great book. It's a great novel. And I had a lot of fun talking to Gretchen about disabilities in apocalyptic fiction. I think you're going to like this episode. I know you're going to like this book, especially if you're a die-hard listener of the podcast. Before I end this intro and get into my conversation with Gretchen, I will say quickly, I do publish my own books through GhoulishBooks.com. We have a lot of fun books coming out this year. We have a new novella from Little Hightower called Below. We have a new novel from John C. Foster called Leech. We have my new novel called Maggot Screaming. Those three and many other books are coming out this year through GhoulishBooks.com. If you want a signed copy of my novel, Maggot Screaming, that's also an option when you go to buy it on GhoulishBooks.com, so go check it out. And if you happen to like this episode, I would definitely appreciate a review on iTunes. That would be cool. Anything to spread the word of this podcast and the people I promote on it would be awesome. I would love that. So, yeah. All right. Let's get into my conversation now with Gretchen Felker-Martin about disability in apocalyptic art. I think we should begin by providing a brief breakdown of what Manhunt is exactly. For those who haven't heard about it by now, which sounds impossible, to be honest, because this book is pretty much on every list imaginable, as you have posted on Twitter. What do you usually say? Manhunt made the list?
Manhunt makes the cut.
For good reason, because the book's great. So,
thank you so much.
For those who don't know what it's about, what can you give us a breakdown?
Yeah, absolutely. Manhunt is a novel about a post-apocalyptic world where anyone with enough testosterone in their system has contracted a virus that transforms them into a murderous, rapist, subhuman cannibal. And the novel follows a pair of trans women who make their living by hunting these sort of de-evolved men and selling their body parts for their hormone content.
You know, I was rereading the book last night because when I read it originally, it was, I think, back in August. And so I needed to refresh myself a bit. And I took a break from reading it to watch the movie Mouse Hunt. Have you seen Mouse Hunt?
I have not.
Okay, it's not the same as Manhunt, but it was a really big like hunting type of day with my media. Both of them has lots of um I would say body horror going on, although one is strictly comedy and the other one is just completely terrifying. I can't recall if mice on Manhunt though. Am I am I missing any good mice scenes that's in the book that I might have forgotten?
I think there actually are some mice when they stay in the abandoned house where their bowstring gets damaged. Beth thinks that it's mice that shoot it.
Okay. Yeah. So see, it's those I don't know.
Well,
Mice are wacky. I don't know. I wouldn't trust a mouse. I don't know. Anyway. Can we talk about the genesis of this book? Because I think obviously apocalyptic books exist, and definitely apocalyptic books about gender exist, but I don't think I've read one that tackles it the way you have. In fact, I think most books that are apocalyptic, and especially general apocalyptic books, tend to just ignore the fact trans people even exist.
Yeah, that's very, very true. And that's a big part of why I wrote this. I was in part inspired by Tori Peters' short story, Infect Your Friends and Loved Ones, which is about a retrovirus that causes all human beings to stop producing sex hormones so that everyone has to go on hormone replacement therapy. But aside from Tori's book, there's never been a story like this that really had anything to do with trans people or considered what our lives would be like in the fallout of one of these events or how they would even affect us medically and socially. I really wanted to cover that ground.
Yeah. Something I'm always fascinated by with apocalyptic fiction is, I guess, just the logistics of building the future of like the universe it takes place in, the process of speculating and deciding what the future may even look like when the apocalyptic incident unfolds. Usually we see like the same kind of outcome. There's no electricity, every city is desolate and abandoned, it's everybody for themselves. But with Manhunt, it's a bit different. There is electricity. Some cities are still populated. Can you just walk me through how one goes about creating an apocalyptic society?
Well, without sounding too grim, I looked out the window. As I think the day I sold this book was like 2 days after we first got news that Corona would be spreading through America.
Yeah.
I had come up with the idea like 5 or 6 months earlier, but it certainly brought it home.
Have you gotten a lot of people like assuming you wrote this because of COVID?
A couple.
Yeah.
But I had the idea first and nature copied me. We've gone through things that we would conceive of as world ending many times as a species. We've been through the Black Death. We've been through genocides. We've been through enormous continent-spanning wars and programs of extermination, all sorts of horrible things that did end the world for whole groups of people. We've been through colonialism. I suppose it would be more accurate to say we inflicted colonialism on people. And typically the lights stay on in one way or another. And people retain their social connections and things. The bread still has to get made. The babies still have to get fed. The end of the world is not, in my mind, about some sort of violent struggle for dominance on like a personal level. It's sort of more of the same, but with the context changed.
Yeah. I guess I'm such a dumb, stupid person that when I think about like the world ending, I don't know how electricity works.
Oh God, me either. I have no useful skills for the end of the world.
I'm fucked. I don't know how anything is done. I just assume someone else will help me. I don't know anything.
Yeah, I mean, we live surrounded by technological marvels that we have no idea how they work or how to keep them up.
I guess that's why it stood out so much to me in Manhunt. I was like, wow, look at these geniuses still operating electricity. Wow. I was impressed.
Yeah, well, there's still engineers kicking around.
Yeah.
Enough people to keep a power plant running.
I guess like libraries would still be around too. Like thinking that if something did happen, but we had it all like fend for ourselves, we could easily teach ourselves how to do these things. I hope, maybe, I don't know. It's not like we could go to WikiHow. I don't think the internet would still exist. That's what I would do. I would Google how to do this.
Yeah, but I do think that we have enough sources of knowledge and enough engineering material that we could remake some sort of grid if that were desirable to the people who survived.
Usually in apocalyptic fiction, like everyone has like one skill, like in the society. Like, yeah, that's the person we go to for, I don't know, making wagons. It's like, do you have like, oh, I would be that person?
Me? Oh, yeah. Man. I think if I were good for anything, it'd probably be entertaining people. In my life, I've been an editor, and I've worked in warehouses and in construction and demolition. I've been a sex worker. I guess that's always useful. But I don't really have any skills that are particularly pertinent to surviving in a hostile world.
Neither do I. Like, I don't think podcasts would make it. I don't know what I would do.
No, I think those would be one of the first things to go.
They might be the reason everything goes. I don't know.
Yeah, we'll see.
Okay, so when I asked you to come on the podcast, the topic you picked for us to discuss was disability in apocalyptic fiction. And I tried to think about some good examples based on this topic, and almost nothing came to mind. So I reached back and I asked you for some homework assignments so I wouldn't sound like a dumbass on the podcast, which I often do. And you clarified that you think disability is most notable for its absence in apocalyptic fiction, which is a great point that I never thought about until you pointed it out. But there really isn't much disability representation in the apocalypse at all that I can think of.
No, there's very, very little.
Yeah.
In fact, I've said this elsewhere, but I feel that a lot of apocalyptic media begins with a kind of soft fictional eugenics. Like,
okay,
everyone who is undesirable, big air quotes, for a certain class of people is just gone. They're wiped away. You never have to think about them or see them. We're not going to see any people who are severely mentally ill. We're not going to see any people who are severely physically disabled. You'd be astonished to even find a character in a wheelchair, which is typically the most visible form of disability in popular fiction. And I think this is a really ugly tendency within fiction, that writers sort of just sweep all of those people away. And as one of those people, I find that really troubling, and I wanted to write a book that thought about them.
Why do you think like the absence exists so heavily? Like, do you think creators don't even think about disabled kill tools, or do you think maybe they're nervous about getting the kill tools wrong?
I'm sure that some people are nervous about the idea of, creating a problematic or unpleasant portrait of disabled people that, could blow up in their face or something. But I think for most people, it's much more simple than that. It's just that on some level, they don't want to think about disability, and so they don't write about it. It's like, when was the last time you saw a fat character in something and they weren't a joke or an object of pity?
Yeah, it doesn't happen often.
Hardly ever.
Yeah, it feels like if a kill tool is fat, the reason they are in the book is because they are fat. And they're going to use that as some sort of punchline, to let the other main kill tools get away because, the fat person is slow.
Yeah, that's something I thought about a lot as a slow fat bitch. There just seems to be this conception that only beautiful, able-bodied white people will survive.
That's distressing to think about. Really depressing. Yeah.
And I don't think it's true either.
No. And like a book like Manhunt, it's really good. It's just a good piece of fiction to read, but also it really makes you think about all these topics, and you think, well, why haven't I read anything like this before? How come this seems so new to me? What is going on in my own society? Why is no one else writing about this? So it leads to all these questions. It really just opens up your mind. So I think that's really why this book is so important, and why this is such a great thing that's coming out through a huge press too.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm very excited about it, and Nightfire has been great to me.
How did you two begin looking? Like, can you walk through how you got the book accepted with them and how it is looking with that press? They seem awesome to me.
Yeah, they're really great. So I did not pitch or sell Manhunt. My agent, Connor Goldsmith, saw a sample chapter that I had posted on my Patreon. At the time, I was self-publishing all my fiction, which is something I really enjoyed, and I really encourage people to do. Get your work out there and, retain the rights to it yourself, build up a body of fiction, and start to find your readership. But Connor stumbled across it, and he offered to represent me if I was interested. And he said that he knew a publisher who might be interested in something that was so comparatively radical and against market trends. And he took it to Kelly O'Connor Lonesome at Tor Nightfire, and they bought it. And, I was sort of minimally involved in that whole process. That was mostly Connor. So really, I fell backwards into it. Yeah. I was very lucky.
Even beyond the book itself, the marketing and like the front cover and the tagline is just so great. Like these little things you don't expect.
Thank you. I came up with that tagline myself.
It's so funny.
The cover is by Sarah Sitkin, who did a lot of the sculptures for the horror show Channel Zero.
Nice.
I really love it.
It's such a relief to see a book like this come out through a huge press, a book that is so very much anti-mainstream, anti-commercial, coming out with like a big press, a big push, and everyone is excited to read it. I am just excited for you and the book, and for anyone else who hasn't read it yet, who's going to. And you mentioned the books you will self-releasing other books before this. I believe they will novellas, right?
2 novellas and a novel. Yeah.
Okay. Do you have any plans of like putting out a collection of some of the 2 novellas and possibly other novellas? I just ask because I'm a huge fan of novella collections.
Oh, thank you. I would love to do something like that at some point, but there are no plans for it at present. I've been just unbelievably slammed. So
yeah, I imagine there's a ton of promo going on behind the scenes with you.
Yeah, there's a lot of work to be done, and I'm also working on my next book.
Did you wrap that up yet? It's called The Cuckoo, right? Or are you still writing it?
I am still working on the ending.
Okay, great. Is anything you can tell us about that now? Do you want to keep that under wraps?
I'm happy to tell you a little bit about it.
Okay, cool.
It is about a small group of queer teens who in the mid-1990s get sent to a conversion therapy camp in Utah. And when they arrive, slowly they begin to discover that something in the camp is creating copies of kids and sending the copies back home.
Nice. As a fan of anything Body Snatcher related, this is really fun sounding. I want to read this ASAP.
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of the especially the 1978 Body Snatchers with Donald Sutherland.
Yeah. I love that movie. The movie's
great.
Really
incredible.
I don't like when people talk about like remakes. No one seems to talk about how that movie is just incredible. That one seems to just kind of slip through anyone's knowledge. I don't know why.
Yeah, that movie blows the original right out of the water. And the original is weighted down by really unpleasant anti-communist politics and a lot of other sort of corniness, but it does have some beautiful scenes, and it has one of the most gorgeous close-ups I've ever seen in a movie. But the 78 remake just blows past it.
Yeah. I might go watch that after we talk. It's been a minute. Have you already thought about the tagline for The Cuckoo?
I have not.
Okay.
I'm gonna have to Gonna have to put my brain to that after I'm done.
It's going to be difficult to beat the wonderful Manhunt. For those who are listening and have no idea, would you like to say the tagline?
Oh yeah, the tagline for Manhunt is "The end of the world is nuts." This is because a large part of Manhunt revolves around, like I said, hunting these feral men and then harvesting their testicles. And it turns out, I learned this while researching, testicles do contain a large amount of estrogen. So they're very useful in this post-apocalyptic landscape where people are still going through menopause and they still have polycystic ovarian syndrome and they still need to keep up on their HRT.
I didn't know testicles had estrogen at all until I read this book. This book is really educational. I think it should be in schools.
Oh man, I look forward to those discussions.
Okay. Any other interesting facts you discovered while researching the book?
Yeah, actually, I discovered that if you leave maple syrup in a dark, cool place in a glass container, it lasts basically forever. You could go down into the basement 200 years later, pop the top and drink it, and you'd be fine.
Do you find that troubling or just awesome?
It's just really cool. I'm a big fan of tree biology and floral biology in general.
Yeah.
So I was really tickled to learn that.
I just immediately found that a bit disturbing. I guess anything that lasts a long time, I don't trust.
Right, it's like a Twinkie, you know. At what point do you realize it's not really food?
Yeah, and like, where did it come from? Not this planet.
Right.
Okay. Any other final thoughts about anything we discussed before we wrap this up?
No, I'd just like to thank you for having me on.
Thank you for coming on. This was great. How can folks find you online?
You can follow me on Twitter at Scumbelievable, which is like unbelievable, but scum. And I have a Patreon under my own name where I post film criticism and sometimes original horror fiction. Google Gretchen Felker-Martin. You'll have your pick of ways to learn things about me.
And that was Gretchen Felker-Martin. Go pick up Manhunt. It comes out tomorrow. Great book. I think everyone's going to love it. Go pick it up. Go buy it. Go read it. And then go on over to ghoulishbooks.com and buy some of the books we are publishing. Because I am really excited about all the books we have coming out and the books we've already released. So go pick some of those up. My new novel, Maggot Screaming, is also available at ghoulishbooks.com. You can buy a signed copy directly from the website. You should do that. I hope you do that. Please do that. And then leave a review of the podcast on iTunes. Thank you.
Live spooky, die spooky.
Rest in peace, Mac.